Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Fred here, and welcome back to Netcode-Hub channel, where we dive deep into all things coding and tech. Today, I'm super excited to kick off an exciting new project, a small project actually, that is building a modern e-commerce application from scratch to finish. In this series, I'm going to walk you step by step through the entire process, starting with the core API development. We'll tackle everything from product listing, cart, and others, all the way to integrating user authentication. Then in a later video, I'll show you how you can build an awesome user-friendly front-end client that ties it up all together. Whether you're a beginner looking to sharpen your skills or an experienced developer eager to learn how to build scalable e-commerce application platform, this series is for you. So if you're ready to take your coding game to the next level and create something real world, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss out any single episode of this. Let's dive in and start building the backbone of our e-commerce app, the API. So in this, we are going to be using the best architecture in the world, and that is clean architecture, introduced by Robert C. Martins, popularly known as Uncle Bob. He created this to help developers build software that is easy to understand, maintain, and flexible to change. The main idea behind clean architecture is to separate the business logic from the other part of the application, like the user interface or the database. This makes the system more organized, easier to test, and adaptable to new requirements without breaking any existing code. That is what we're going to be using. So we'll launch a Visual Studio 2022 or higher, and in there we're going to create a solution and add our 4 projects. Alright, so you can see that we have our projects created. These are 4 projects. We have application, domain, host, and now the infrastructure. Now, infrastructure, domain, and application, they are all C# library as you saw. Now, with the host, it is an API. That is a presentation. But in this case, I prefer giving it host because you're going to be creating client as well. So you can make it presentation or you can change the name as well. Well, you have to follow the same structure, but the name can change depending on what you're doing. You can change the names. It is not mandated to put in application, domain, presentation, and infrastructure. You can modify or you can change the names. Alright, so now that we have these applications created in our solution, what can we do? Let's go in there and start creating our model. Since we're going to create a simple e-commerce app, we need to have a business logic in the domain, which is independent. And that is so we're going to have our interfaces as well, which has a repository interface, which later will be, we're going to implement them in the infrastructure. Okay. Now, in an enterprise level application, you will not need to use generics. Well, there are some reasons behind that. But generics also make things easier, skipping code duplication and a whole lot. In some applications whereby your specifications are not complex, then you can go ahead and use generic. So that is what you're going to be using as well. So I'm going to introduce you to a simple generic which can help us create, update, read, and perform delete in a database. So what are some of the models you think we're going to be using or we need to use in an e-commerce? I believe you're saying product and category. Yes, we're going to be using that. Bear in mind that we're having a simple application. We don't want to make it complex. We want to make it simple. But as time goes on, you can improve this. You can extend the models and add more models to this. All right. So let's go to the domain. And in there, we're going to add a model. So in a way of organizing your code, you can put them in folders. So you can create folders in there, and that is where you're going to create your models in. So let's go in there and have our first folder known as entities, and that is what you're going to put in our models in. So let's add folder. Now we're going to add class, so we can move this one in. Let's change the name to maybe product. So in our product model, we can have some properties such as name, price, but first of all we need an ID. So we're going to create a GUID ID for each product, and that is ID. Let's specify the key here. So EF understands is an ID to the database. Okay, so now that we have this, we need to add the other properties. So you can see that from here we have a product, and these are the properties that we need for now. You can add more. And we have categories. Under category we have an ID and under name. Now we're establishing relationship that is a one-to-many. So a product here can have one category, but when you go to the category here can have many products. So let's establish that is a one-to-many or many-to-one relationship. So we're going to be using these conversions and navigation properties. You can also create this using Fluent API. That's where you put them in the model creating. Okay, but for now, since you're having just a small relationship here, we can do it here. So let's focus on using this conversions and navigation property in establishing a relationship. Okay, so we have our prop. Then here we can use collection. It could be read only. And here we're saying this is product. So product. Okay, so we have our relationship established nicely. Now let's go ahead, and now with this we can extract this and to a new file. Great. So now that we have this, we can go ahead, create a DB context and start creating a table with this. But before we do that, we need to create our DTOs. So let's go to the application. In here, let's add a folder. Let's name this as DTOs. And that we can also add another folder, and that is product DTO. So in product DTO, I think we have DTOs here, so we don't need to add it to again. Let's try to make it simple. Okay, so let's add class, and here will be, we're going to perform CRUD. So we're going to say create product, and in here we can also have our public update product. I think that is all. We need to create an update. That is where we need to provide model, isn't it? So now create product. What do we need? Let's go to our product model and let's grab all this. For create, we need this. Then we need category ID. Now for update, we need the same, and aside from that we need an ID. which is product ID for update. We are having duplications here. Can we skip it? Yes, we can. Let's have public. This is product. It should be class, isn't it? Now let's move the common ones. Yeah. I hope you're watching. Then this product base, let's inherit it. So we can do that by using inheritance to get rid of duplications. So all this can be out. Amazing. So nice. Okay. So now that we have this, let me clear this one to make it simple, right? All right. So we can move this to separate files. We can do that. So you can click on this, move to, okay, so this is a create already. So let's move update and also the product base. Now we're going to do the same to category. So let's have it. And with this, when we check from our category, we haven't name and ID. So for this, we don't need. So here's an update. And in that, we need an ID. So here we don't need that. So this, we can also extract this because we have common one here. So let's extract it. So just move this out. Let's do inheritance. So we can get rid of this. So when you do this, it means you are skipping code duplication, right? Okay. So let's move this. We have create product, this is create category. So this should be in its own file. Let's do same. Now let's move this category base out. For organization purpose, we can't mix category and product together. We need to have separate folder for that to make it more readable to you and I. All right, so we have product and category details created. Okay, let's go to our infrastructure, and in there we need to add application. So, and that's what we're going to be using our models here. That's our details to communicate with. Okay, so let's have our infrastructure. Let's have a folder created. And then let's name this as repositories, because that's going to hold the implementations of the interfaces. Okay, so we can clear this. Now once you have this, before we implement this, we need to have the interface, right? The head first before the tail. So let's go to our domain, and in here we're going to create our interfaces. So let's add folder to the domain project. And we're going to be using product interface. Since we're going to perform same CRUD with product and category, although we are going contrary to the solid principle, right, well, I think we can use this in a small project. It's efficient and actually just CRUD. So yeah, I think it's going to work. So let's create an interface. And we're going to make it as generic. So I'm going to say this is iGeneric. You see? And now with this interface, let's have our create, read, update, and delete. Before we do this, we're going to be handling responses with a class. But well, in an interface, we want to, when we use the async methods, they return a number, and we can base on that number to predict if the operation was successful or not. So we can do that. And also we're going to introduce an exception in it, so we can throw an exception in case something happens. And at the end of the day, we're going to catch this exception. So there are so many ways of doing this. Let's try this one too and see. So let's have our generic type here. This should come from an entity, where this entity here is going to be a class. Make this as public. And in that, we're going to have our get everything and get by ID, because we're going to get all categories, we're going to get all product. So we're going to say it's a task, which is going to return enumerable. This should be an interface, not a class. Aside from that, we're going to add. Now in adding, that's going to return a type of int. So we say this is add async, which takes in t entity. And aside from that, we're going to update and delete with the same t entity. And now for delete, we need to provide only the ID. So let's have them also implemented. So we have another card here, and this is going to be used by product and category. All right, let's remove this one. It means we need to create a generic implementation for this. So once we have this, let's go to our repository and let's add a class, which is going to be generic repository. Now once you have this class implemented, this should be public, and this should inherit from the iGeneric. Now here we need to include the application, which also includes the domain. So dependencies, project references, and application, going for domain. Then in the infrastructure dependencies, we're going for application. And then we're going to have this here. Now let's implement this interface. So iGeneric, generic constructor, implement interface. We're not having that. Let's check it again. And we also need to specify this, the type that we pass it on. So here we need t entity, and now this entity here is a class. So we need to implement the interfaces that we have. and we need to supply this t entity. So let's pass t entity. Okay. Now let's include our DB context. We are not having DB context, isn't it? So it means we need to create one. I have my name created already. So let me just grab that. Let's go to solution in the domain. Let's add folder. So in the infrastructure, we need to add folder here. Call it as that is our data. Then we need to create a class, which is appdb context, or give it any name at all. Should be a context class. Then this is public. So for now, let's use db context. Now this db context, we need to install Entity Framework core. So you make sure you install this package. After we are done, we can create constructor with this. So control period, create constructor, pass in an option, and in that we need to specify. So that's our db context. Let's create our db sets. So we have our products, and at the table name, we want to make it products. Then we have same for category, and I will say this is categories. So we can streamline this to make it simple. .NET 8 introduces primary constructor, so we can use that on just a line. We have all things set up. So we have our tables created in here nicely. Okay, so we go back to a generic, and we can have our DB context. So let's include it. And in here, we're going to, you see we have an add. So we need to add. So let's use our context that we have, dot set. And our set here, that is the entity coming in. So any entity that is coming in, as far as it has a table created or configured in the app setting, not the app setting, the appdb context is going to make it work. So we say this is the entity, and we say dot add. So maybe after that, let's have await. Then this context or save changes. Now I know that this returns integer. So without wasting time, let's return this integer. And now also for delete, what can we do? Let's go to implementation. And first of all, we need to get this product first, right? So let's get this product. So here, this should be an async. So we're going to get this context, then entity.find async. We pass in the ID to make it find. In case you couldn't find it, then what can we do? We can return -1. You can return any number at all, or we can throw an exception also. So I prefer we throw an exception, so we can pass in a specific message that we want. So in that, let's go to the same folder, the same solution, now in infrastructure. So here, let's add a new folder, and let's say this in exceptions. In this folder, let's add a class, and we say item not found. We want to make it general so that we can use this in the category as well. Else, we need to create the same thing in the category, which actually going to have the same code base. Yeah, so we can we can be smart here, right? So item not found exception. Now this exception inherit from this exception, and now in that we want to pass in our own message in that. So we don't want to hard code any message here. We want to make it dynamic sense. We're going to be using that in both product API and category, and maybe the other API that you might add. Let's create, I think, constructor CTOR. Now in this constructor we want to pass in string message, the message that you want to pass in, and that is all. Okay, now all this, what we can do, once you pass in this, maybe you want to inherit from this base, so we can have base of, and let's specify the message. Okay, yeah, you can use primary constructor. It works well. It works well like this. It works. Let's make this as public. Let's remove all unnecessary usings. So once you have item not found exception, we pass in a message. Let's go to our repo, and in here you can go ahead and check it out. So if entity is equal to null, then we can throw new item not found exception. That is coming from the folder that we created, and here it needs a message. So we can say that here, since we're making this generic, you cannot specify the product name. Or well, maybe you can use item not found, but to be precise, maybe we can grab the name of the product and return the name of the entity, not the product itself. So how can we achieve that? We can grab something like this. Let's use type of. Now type of this T entity coming in this model, by all means it has name, and we're saying that this not found. So here we want to, or maybe we can use this. I think we can use this when we are adding rather. So let's see if this T entity. Okay, so it should be an ID. Yeah, I think so. Because we're making a search here, in case you could not find that, you want to just return this ID. So we're going to say that item with ID not found. But well, since you're going to be also using this item not found exception, ideally it is good to place this in the application layer, because I think that for this infrastructure you should focus on maybe data access exception or maybe network exceptions. So in order not to go wayward, let's move this to the application, so we can be using this or reuse this exception even when consuming the service. So let's move this folder as a whole to the application. Now that we have it here, we can go ahead and remove it. Now this exception, it should come from application. So we have an item not found exception, and since we are inheriting this application in the infrastructure, we can still have access to it. You can see, so we still have access. making this reusable. And that's a great idea. Okay. So now we have this. We're going to try an exception in case we could not find that. And in case we get it, then what are we going to do? We strictly go ahead and remove it. So instead of re-adding, we can grab this. We're going to remove it. And now return this, which returns an integer. Okay, so let's see. We can use this correlation operator on a single line, and that's also amazing. In case it is null, then we want to throw this exception. Okay. The next thing that we're going to do here is we can also check for get async. Now for get async, we can return this context, and now we're using as no tracking to improve it. So we did not, or EF code does not track this. Now get by ID, we need to also return. So maybe we can call this. Then when we have the response, we want to return the result. The results could be of a type of entity or null. So in case it is null, we can check it from the service and do the necessary things that we need to do. Now let's go to the update. So we're also going to set this. Instead of removing, we go ahead and update it. So we having a crowd implemented. This is a generic, and any model that you pass it on with this is going to work. So let's go ahead and create a dependency ingestion container, then register this repo with the interface that we have created in the application layer. So in infrastructure, we can add folder. So let's add class of service container. So this returns a nice service collection, and let's say this add infrastructure service. Let's also include configuration so we can register database connection. We can do it here as well. Then we need to install this package. So now that we have this installed, we can open the body, and in here let's have register database connection first. So we're going to say services. So dot add db context. So dot add db context. So we need to install SQL Server. So let's install this package. So in the infrastructure dependencies, manage NuGet packages, and let's install SQL Server so we can use it here. So we need Entity Framework. So this one. Okay, so after we are done, in order for us to perform migration, we need to also install the tools package to our presentation, that is a host. So on the host, dependencies, let's add this package. Okay, great. Now let's go back to our service container, and now we must have use SQL. We are still having use SQL server. So dot use SQL server, and now in this server we need to specify a connection string. So we said this is need to have our config. So our config dot get connection string, and what's going to be the name. So maybe we need to pass in a connection string name here. You can get it from the settings.json. So maybe let's get it from here. And now in here, what is in the section name? Section name, let's say this is default. And let's copy this and now pass it down. Okay. So whilst we have this, we can also go ahead and now add the scope. So under this, we can also have migration assembly. This happens when we're going to perform migration, because we're going to perform the migration the API, the host. By this, where we have a migration file, right? So you want to make sure they sync. We specify type of, and that is the service container that we have created. We want to get it assembly.fullname. And aside from this, we need to have the scope. And for the scope, you're going to have service lifetime dot scope. Now we can close this. So I forgot one thing. We need to add retry. Okay, so in case it wants to get connected to a database, it tries the first attempt and it fails, we want to retry again. So let's say service SQL server options dot, let's say, enable retry on failure. Okay, so have configured it well. I think the arrangement wasn't nice. Okay, so now that we have this, we can go ahead and return services. So we have our database connection registered. So now that we have this, we can go to our presentation, that's our host, and configure our database connection string in the app settings. So connection, now that is default. So in here we have our server, and server is equal to, we can use local database, this eCommerce DB. So we need to trust connection because we're using window authentication, and we also need to trust the certificate. So as soon as it gets connected, data can be manipulated. So we have this created. Let's save this. Now the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to register our interface that we created. That's a generic interface and its implementation. So in the same service container class that we created, we're going to register that here, which is services.addScope. So our generic, and then here we're going to also have our generic implementation. So we have our repository. So you can see that when you look at this, it needs T entity, right? So here, what do we have? That's for product. So we have our product here, and that is our entity. We have the same product here for entity. So since we have domain in this, we can use it here. Same thing. We do same for category. So you can see we have created only one generic, but we can use it. Not limitation is not even up to category. We can extend it. You can add more models and still need to register that, and you are good. So now that we are good, let's go and consume this in a service that we're going to create. And a service too, I'm sure we need to create generic service. So we're having generic interface implementation and our service as a consumer. So let's handle that in our application. So before we have our interfaces here, we need to have another folder for our service. And for the services, let's have our generic service. You know, putting the service here, it is I think it's the best. But let's think about one thing. We want to return a model as a response model. And in the response model, we don't want to put DTOs in the domain. DTOs should reside in the application so we can use that to interact with the service. And in this case, we want to call this service in here. Then it means we need to bring the domains or the DTOs here, which is not the best idea. So what we're going to do here is we're going to move this service out. If we are not using a response or a specific or a custom response type, then we can pass this interface into the domain, because when you check the generic, it returns integer. It doesn't return any specific type. Okay, but so if you want to maintain same in here, it means that in case it is added, we're going to have the ID or maybe 1 or etc. value in here. But with this, we want to check if it is 1. We want to actually translate that 1 into a meaningful message for the user to understand, rather than returning 1 to the user. So in this case, we need to step in, and by stepping in, this should be moved out. I'm thinking of not using generic service here. Let's create a specific service for each model. Okay, yes, because we might face issue when using the generic service. We did not face any when using the interface, but well, we might face some here. So instead of this generic, let's be specific. This is iProduct service. Now this product service, let's move this, okay, from the domain. So we're going to say this is service interface. So in the application, bring it there, and I'll remove it from the domain. In the services, you can add another folder and separate the interface from the implementation. So we say this is the interfaces. And let's move this, which is no more our generic, but rather this is going to be a product. Now with this iProduct service, we're going to copy same here, and when we go to the product, iProduct service, let's paste this. So with this won't be generic because we are saying it's a product, so we are specifying the model. So it means we need to provide this model, and now here we are not using the actual model, we are using the DTO because this is a service, and a DTO is going to be used to communicate between the service and the interface. Okay, so we have to provide, this is create product, and for get by ID, we did not create get product, isn't it? So in our DTOs, we have create, we did not get it. So for update, you can also grab this, or this is what we can do. You're gonna have class get product. Now, get product is going to have the same properties as update. Okay, so in order not to confuse us more, we don't want to inherit from this update. Okay, although if we inherit from this update, we're going to inherit everything, and that's what we need. But well, let's repeat this. This inherit from the product base. Now let's add the property here. Let's generate a class for this. So this is going to return, when we check here, this is going to return the product, only the product. You know, product also has category. We are not adding category, so we can add category to it. And now category, we're not using the category model itself, rather the DTO. So we say get category. Do we have that? No, we don't. So get category. And now we say this is category. Now let's go to the category. We can even make this as null, so we can skip this. You go to the category, and now we can use same. Which also needs an ID. So for category 2, we can get category with product, right? So let's also have this I collection of get product. Then we say products. We can equate this to new, or we can use this one. So since at times we're going to skip it, let's make it as now. Okay, move this to class. So this category base has the name, isn't it? Great. So let's also inherit from the category base. So any modification that we do to the base is going to affect all. It's great. So we don't need to be doing it in each of the models or the DTOs. When we go to get categories, so we can include it here. So if you cross check, we have get category, which takes in a collection of get product. We have get product, which takes in a collection of get category. Not a category, just a single category. Because each product is going to have a single or one category. But one category is going to have multiple products. Alright, so we have this set. Now let's go to our service. iProduct service. We have our create. So this is get product. Then here we want to return service response. It means we need to create service response. So in the DTO, in our DTO we have a request and a response. So let's put the response here. Service response. Let's make this as a record, which takes in flag. If it is to success, we can make it success to be specific. Let's make this record. So let's specify the properties that we need. This is success. Let's set this to false, and we have string message. Set this to null. Let's terminate this and clear this. Now let's go back and integrate this in our service. So in here we need to use this service. We want to return service as well, and now serve it. Now here this is going to be get product, and this since we're going to add, is going to be create product. And update is going to be update product. So here we do same for the category service. Now we have this, so we have get category for get all. We have get category. Then here we need to have a create category. Then we have an update. So maybe you are saying, oh, it is the same code that we're repeating, so why don't we use generic? Yes, you can use generic here. When you use generic, unless if you're going to use an automapper, which needs implemented in the application, you cannot do that unless you do it in the controller, which goes against the rule of solid principle. So, and also another one is when you use generic like this, as what we've done already in the repository, when you use it in case you want to add a specific implementation for one entity, such as a category only, you cannot do it because category and product are using the same code base. So when you add this implementation to the code base, product can see it, category can also see it, which is not the best. Okay, so you can see that it has downs when using repositories or generics. So here we want to skip that future errors that may pop up, and let's go ahead and use separate interfaces for each model. Okay, so we are good. Let's move this to separate class. So when you check application services interfaces, we get them here, right? Great. Now we need to have implementation. So in the same folder, services, let's add new folder. We can name it as implementations. And let's add class, which is going to be product service. Now this inheriting from product service. Let's implement the interface. We need to do same for category. Okay, so now that we have this, let's go and consume the interface. The interface resides in the domain. Domain here has been referenced in application, meaning we're going to get it when we try to use it. And that is generic repassing of product. Then there's going to be product. So we don't say generic, just generic like that. Do we have to say generic like that? No, let's say this is product. So this is product interface. So now here, we haven't create product, and here this takes in product. Check it out. If I'm consuming this is going to return an integer. See, I have this int, result is an integer, and here we're going to get a width product interface dot add async, which takes in product entity. But in here we have this create product. There is a DTO, and this DTO should not get in touch with the interface. So how do we do it? That is where the mapping comes in. So we need to map it. We can map it using Mapster or AutoMapper. I have used Mapster in one of my projects, and also AutoMapper as well. But well, let's go in for AutoMapper because that is widely known by many developers. Let's install that. So let's get this from solution, application, dependencies, then AutoMapper. So that is this. Once you have this package installed, you need to create a mapping configuration. So let's add folder. Now, so this is mapping. Now, in this mapping, I'll add a class, and I'll have mapping config. In the mapping config, this should be a public class, and this class should inherit from profile, which is coming from AutoMapper. Profile or program? It's profile. We need to create constructor. That is where we're going to be doing our magic. So in here, let's create map coming from a T source. So T source here, it is coming from create category. Where is it going to? Category. Another one, create map. It is going to, it's coming from create product, which is going to product. The next one, create map. It is coming from category, and it is going to get category. Next one is coming from product. It is going to get product. I hope this is clear to you. So now that we have this, we need to go and register this. So we can create dependency injection also in the application layer. So we can register all these services. You don't need to cross this to the API and register individual. You want to organize them. All right. So let's do that. So let's create dependency injection. Let's add container. So in here, we need to add it. So we say services dot automapper. And now with this, we need to get where, at least let's get where the file is, right? So we can have type of, specify the file, the configuration file. That is mapping config, this file. Let's register. Our products. And we say product service. I believe you've done this already. Category 2. So product service, category service. Okay, so we need to create I category service. So it's a typo. All right. So we have this. So now that we have this, let's go and map our models, our DTOs to the entities. So we go to the application service or the product service, and in here, let's say this is map data, and this equal to, let's inject iMapper interface, and we say this mapper dot map, and a mapping from a destination to source. So a mapping from product to this product. This is a create product, a mapping to this entity, and then we can pass this here. Now with this, we need just an ID, so we don't need to map anything. So we can just strictly go ahead and say return await. Then we have our interface.delete ID. This returns a service response, but this returns an integer. So we're going to say that if ID, we need to store this. So this results that is coming in, if this ID here, it is greater than 0, meaning it is success. So in this case, we can just return new service response with this in true, and our simple message. So product deleted. You see, because this is an integer, so if this results, is greater than 0. Else, what can we do? We want to return false. So maybe product not found, because here product not found. We are not actually grabbing the actual exception. What is happening? We don't want to, in our call, we don't want to display this sensitive information to the user. So we want to give out something which tells the user that, oh, okay, you encountered problem in doing that. Okay, but we are not actually telling the user exact problem. But the exact problem, how can you do it? You can use global exception handler to handle that and log it into the database, so you can cross-check anytime, anywhere. This sounds great, isn't it? So do not display the actual issue to the user. So we can say product field to be deleted. For the cause, it doesn't know to know. So we can use this. You can use ternary operator to return this. Make it just a line. So results greater than 0. Is that true? If yes, then return no response. If no, then kindly give the stream. That is all. So one line. Now here we're going to also do same. So this is going to return null in case it returns null, right? So we don't need to do anything. We can just go ahead and return await product interface.get or return. So we're going to check from the controller. If it is null, then maybe return not found CTOS code. But here it returns, check it out, it returns product, list of product. So we cannot return it straight like that. We need to first store this in the memory. So that is a raw data. Let's map it. But before we map it, when it is null and we want to map it, it's going to have an exception. We want to skip that. So in skipping it, let's make sure we fix it here before it escalates to become an exception. So we're going to say that if raw data dot count is equal to 0, then return. We want to return null here. Or you can even, since it is returning an enumerable, you can return an empty list. Okay, and even with this, what can we do? Again, in case it isn't null, then we can go ahead and map it. So let's use mapper dot map. T source is I enumerable of get product. So that's the destination, and at the source here it is raw data. So when you use a mapster, that is the other package, or that is the other mapping package, you cannot map list. I tried once and I had an issue. That's the reason why I quickly choose this one, the auto mapper. But maybe I'll try it again in case it works. I also have a video on that, how you can use mapper to map list. For single entity, it works perfectly fine, and even configuration for that is it's simpler than this. It's very, very simple, but this is more intense. Okay, so once we have this map, we can return this. So we don't need to even store it in memory again. We can go ahead and return it straight. Then we go to get by ID. We're also going to do same. So let me grab this. So get by ID, and here we can return new get product. We can use equal to now or is now. You can use any of them. Then here we are not mapping list, just a single entity. Okay. Now for update, it is the same approach to add. Now here we have the results. So let's go and grab this. And I'll paste it up. Maybe you can extract this in a single method, so you can call that to skip all this. Okay, so let's grab this to the update. So you first have to map it. Then inside of the add, we say update, map data, and now product updated. So we are done with the product interface or the product service. Now we're going, this should be public. I'm going to grab same, go to category service, and I'll make changes in that. That is a secret. So we go to our service again, category service. I also have it here. Maybe we need to copy and paste. Or maybe you can paste it down here so we can just have it. So the first one is add. Let's grab this. Add. Inside of product, here it is category. And here let's inject our category interface. So I generic. The category interface. So let's copy this. Let's find and replace it or this. This should be an async, and we should include mapper2 now inside of product. We say category. Alright, so now that we are done with this, the next thing that we need to talk about here is validation, model validation. You know, validation is very important in validating what the user sends or what you take into your system. So in order to validate, you can use Fluent validation, or you can use the default validation method integrated. To make this simple, we want to use the default one, but well, for advanced scenarios, we need to use the customized one. Maybe I have a separate video on how you can do that. When you use this default one, you know, validations are going to be applied on the DTOs. So in case in the near future your DTO changes, it means you need to write validations again, add a validation attribute again. And it does not conform with the solid principle. We need to have, the model should have one method, one function. And validations also have its function. We should not add validation against model. So we can do that. But well, in this video, we're going to override that. We're going to maintain the natural state. So how do you do it? We go to our DTOs. Now in our DTOs, all that we need to do here is we need to add what is necessary. Attribute required. So here we are saying required, and when we go to from the create, we have same get. It is same. Now one bad thing about this is we are all inheriting from the base category. So although we are saying required, by get is a response DTO, not a request. So in this case, we might not need to use we might not need to validate it, because you're going to get something from the database to the user. You want to validate what is coming into the system from the user. But since we are validating the category base, it means it's going to be affected. That's the reason why normally you can go in for a custom validation using Fluent API or any other validation third package that we have. But for now, let's maintain it. In case we want to have a response like this, when you have a response GTO, we make sure that we provide a value before it returns to the user. And that is the solution to the problem. So let's go again. Now let's check our update. Update needs an ID. So you say this is required. And now with this, I think it has good or so. Okay. Or we can specify the data type as grid. But well, since it is good here, let's maintain that. So we are having a required attribute for all. And for our product, we need required. And in here, we can specify a custom message. Default is going to pick this name and then say this is required. But I know you can customize, you can override that and put in your own customized message. If you want to do that, then open a bracket. And I can see from here we have error message. You can then go in and specify your error message in here. But since it is the same as what you're going to be doing, you want to maintain the default one. So here we having a product which is required. We having our description, same, price, same, image is required, quantity, and then category ID. So when you go to the update, it is having same. Let's include this required to this. So we are done with the category, and so creating using a default validation is quite simple. There are a lot of attributes that you can use. For example, when you go to the product base, we have an price here, right? So we can maybe have a method which, let's see, data type. Another one is here, I think, data type.currency. So this is currency. We can make it as currency. And when we go to our product itself, product in our domain layer, entities, product, we have decimal here, so we need to provide the decimal, the column type, or maybe column. column type or column without wasting time. So that's a decimal, and we have only one decimal. We go to product base. Since this is going to be a DTO, we don't need to provide that. Okay, so we have image, and this image should be base64 string. So we can say base64 image, and I think this also has a property of base64 string. But with the base64 string, when we add this, we're going to have an issue. Due to the reason why, when we convert our image, we're going to add the file format. If it is PNG, or maybe image/PNG or image/JPG, and image/JPG, it is not in base64, so it's going to be an issue. So it's better we remove this. Else, we need to separate the PNG, the file format, from the base64 string. And the next time that you want to display, unless we add it, all because of this, so we can't do that. We can't stress ourselves too much. So let's remove this and make it open. Okay. Now quantity, we have price, and maybe you can add old price, or old price, or discount. You can add more features. All right, so now that we are done with our validations, what's the next thing for us to do? We need to create our controller, isn't it? Now we have our service created, which has consumer interface. We have our mapper mapped and are being used in the service. So the next thing to do here is to register the service and create a controller to consume the service. Now let's check that one out. You go to the application service container. We have them registered. Great. Let's go to the host, and in the controller, let's create product controller. Now with this product, let's inject a service. So that's an I product service. Whereby this we should add the application. Then we say product service. Or since we have only one service, we can add product service. All right. Then let's have our first method. We want to use gets. You can say get all. Now with this get all, we want to have public asyntax action results. So you're making this open to all types of response. Although we are returning service response, you can make it specific to this service response. But well, action result also works, which is open. So we can use that. Then we say this is get all. If our data is equal to await product service get all, then we say return data dot count greater than 0. If yes, return OK for the data, else return not found. So let's go to the next one, return single. So with this not found, this could be, let's see if when you pass in same data, because in there we have a message in there that we can display. And now this single takes in an ID. So the ID, we can make it in the form of query string or parameter. So I like parameter a lot. I don't know the reason why. But you can add query string. If you want to add query string, then you do not need to specify the parameter in here. And now this is get by ID. Okay. Now this ID, it is not integer, it is skewed. Now you are saying if it's not equal to now, that is I want to pass in, okay. Or pass in not found. So with not found, it's going to be the data is, because this data is coming with now, okay. So we can override that or you can maintain it. This also returns now, or maybe an array, empty array. So we can also return this data. We can start to skip that. For that one, it's gonna work. So we have get all and then get by ID. The next one is get, gonna have a delete, add, and an update. So let's go for add. Now this add is HTTP post. So let's have our public async task. So in here we take in create product. Now let's check the results, which come in at in a response of service response. So we can say that let's use same as this. So if results of success, if it is true, then return okay with the results, or meaning there's an issue, right? So let's see if we can have a nice, can we make it bad request? You have internal. Let's make it as bad request. So with this bad request, it takes in model states and also error objects. Okay. So results. In there. Then let's go to an update. So you can see we also doing same. We call an update and I will check the state and return it. We have last one of delete. Which takes in an ID. And now this shouldn't be post. should be delete. For update should be put. Then this takes in an ID. Pass on the ID. So here, since we need a response to return, that's the reason why we have been returning okay. Else, when it gets deleted, we can return no content. When it gets created, we can return created. But since we have a specific return type, we can use okay to return that specific. Okay, so we have our controller created for product. We're going to do same for category. So let me just remove this. Okay, now let's go and create. Let me pick this. Let's add category controller. API new. And that is category. And in here we need to remove. So let's move this. iProduct service. You're going to make an iCategory service. So now that we have, we need to use this category service in place of the product service. So click on this, go to this, replace it with the category interface. Click on next. So that's category service, and now okay, so we have it changed. And here, create category. Okay, then the next one here, we need to make sure we have the same model. Okay, so yes, so we are done with our two controllers, our products, and our category. So I was thinking about where we introduce the exception in the infrastructure. I think we are not doing the right way, because infrastructure layer should only focus on technical details such as data access and not business logic, like whether an entity is not found or an error. It is the application who is responsible to decide on that and to an exception. So I think we should remove that from there. And also, the method is having two functions. It is deleting, also it's throwing an exception, which is not ideally the right way to handle that. So I think we have to go in there and remove this. So since you are returning an integer, it means you can return 0 from here. So instead of returning item not found, we can return 0 or so, yes. So let's return 0. That is item not found. You see? So we can now go ahead and check if this is null, then you want to return entity if entity is null, then return 0. So we know that when it comes we get a response of 0, then it means that the ID here, or the specific entity not found. In that case, we need to remove this exception, and the best way to handle exception is in the application layer. But in application layer, we're having our own model or our own way of handling issues, so we don't need to throw an exception in the application layer. So check it out. When we go to the application layer, especially the product service, here we are returning service response. So the results here, we are saying that if the result is greater than 0, we are returning this. Else, the results can be 0, can be negative. If it is 0, it means the product is not found at all. So instead of displaying this product failed to be deleted, we can display product not found. We can check it from here. So we can say that if product or if result is equal to 0, so for a specific, we know that, hey, this product not found. So we can just go in and return this. Else, what can we do? If the result is greater than 0, it means product deleted. But in case you have any other result, such as -1 or so, that is where we need to handle that with a middleware. And in this case, we want to say that product failed to be deleted. So instead of having this lambda, we can also use if to check, or we can also check it again. Since it's just an integer, we can do check, which doesn't consume a lot of memory processing. Okay, so we have this. It means we need to do same in there's a product service. So in a category service, we need to also handle that. So the category, but don't you think we can also streamline this? Yes, we can. So we can say that in case the ID is here, it is greater than 0, then return true, or maybe fail to be deleted. Okay, so we can say that category not found or fail to delete. We can just use this one to add the response of this and add the response of the other one as well. So let's have something like category not found or fail to delete. Let's remove this. Let's do same to the product service. So let's go and build a project and perform migration. Okay, so package manager console, and we have to make sure we have our host selected. But before that, we go to the host, and from this host program.cs file, we need to include the service. So let's have our user, so infrastructure, we have application the dependency injection, and we're going to have same for infrastructure 2. And in the host dependencies add project, we need to add the infrastructure and remove the application, because infrastructure contains the application. And then here let's have a builder.services .add infrastructure service .add application service. So .add application service, and this will come from, I think, application. So yes, now here we need configuration, so we pass in builder.configuration. Now the next thing that we're going to do is, so this contains a DB connection, so we have it set. So when we can verify from the solution the infrastructure, and you go to service container, this is the domain, we have our host, this is infrastructure, service container, and we have that. So that is default. Okay, now let's go and add migration. Let's make sure infrastructure is our default project. Let's set the host as startup. Okay, so let's go and test this out. So we have our endpoint ready, but first of all, let's check if a database has been created. So we go to SQL Server Object Explorer, click on Views, and you can have it. So let's open this, my server database, and I have eCommerce AppDB, that is this. So I have, if I open tables, I'm going to have the product and a category tables. Yes, I do have them here. Alright, so we can go ahead and now test this out. Let's say from category, get all categories. So we have the status code of 404 not found. Let's see, so not found. We can also test for product, and that is not found. Let's go and add. We need to add category first. Electronics. Now we add. So you can see category added. Let's go and see if we get all, we can have access to it. Yes, we have it. So we can grab this category ID, Then we go to the product. Let's pass in the category ID. So when we click on execute, we have product added. When we get to get product, we have the category ID, we have the base image, we have the ID of everything here. Great. So it means our endpoints are ready and they are working as expected. Yeah, so you can try your hands on the delete and get and update. It's going to work, trust me. Let's close it. We are not done.